All right. Good noon, everybody, and welcome back to God Was Here, our study of the life of Christ as recorded in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We should be wrapping up the last section of the middle of Jesus' life with the teachings. We've made notes several times now that the general pattern you see within those books is here's a few things Jesus taught, here's a few things Jesus did, and it keeps going on that until this last bit of the things that he taught before we get to the last week of his life. If I cover everything I intend to in this, then we should be moving on to what is known as the Passion Week next. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Last time we saw Jesus teaching about the rich man and Lazarus. And now we are going to be in Luke chapter 17. As already mentioned, we're pretty much through Matthew and Mark until we get to that last week of Jesus' life. So Luke chapter 17 is where we are. And we're going to start in verse 5. The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." And the Lord said, "If you had faith like a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you." All right, we've seen this, this is poor organization on my part because we've seen Jesus say this before. This is probably Luke's account of the same thing before. He said similar things. Remember, he said to the mountain, "Move yourself and you will." We've talked about this before as well. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, he's not indicating that you would be able to do this at will or anything like that. He just talks about the power of faith. We don't have to go over all of that again. But what I do want to get into is beginning in verse 7. "Will any of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep say to him when he has come in from the field, 'Come in at once and recline at the table'? Will he not rather say to him, 'Prepare supper for me and dress properly and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterward you will eat and drink'? Does he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, 'We are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty.'" Okay, so Jesus says this. If anybody, according to the ESV, has a servant, I'm not sure why it chooses to translate it servant here, because the word there, doulos, ESV usually has this wonderful translation for it, which I think really fits for us perfectly, which is bond servant. Your version might translate that as slave as well. The reason I don't prefer that one is just because of all the connotations of modern slavery that we're used to. You know, the most recent form of legal slavery that we're aware of is a much nastier form of slavery than what they would have been aware of. So the term bondservant really threads that needle pretty well, I think, and it gives us a better idea without all that negative connotation that we're used to. I don't know why it chooses not to use bondservant here, but that would be the proper term, bondservant. But this is what Jesus says. If you have somebody who's a bondservant and they've been working all day, do you not then ask them to perform their other duties that they might have? So let's say that their duty is, I think in this case it was to plow the field, right? But you also are supposed to make supper for the master. If that's what they're supposed to do, that's what they're supposed to do. And they shouldn't think of themselves as somebody who has gone above and beyond. In your job, if you do only exactly what the job description says, that's good, but don't think to yourself, I'm just an extreme asset here because I'm so much more than what was bargained for. You've done what you're supposed to do, which is fine, but don't think that the employer owes you anything for doing what you were supposed to do other than what has already been agreed to. And that, of course, goes both ways, right? You might have a lot of employers who think that their employee owes them something special more than what's in the contract, when all you have done for them is given them what they're owed as well. Well, Jesus says if there is one who is a bondservant and they've done all that, does one thank that person? He's not, by the way, saying that it's wrong to be polite and thank somebody for something that they were supposed to do in the first place. It's a good habit to do exactly that. by the way. You'll get through life a whole lot easier if you thank people for things, even if they were supposed to do it. But that thank you is really just a thank you out of politeness, right? A more important thank you is those thank yous, like that gratitude that comes from something that somebody gave as a free gift, right? So if the servant's duty is to plow the field and then they are supposed to make supper, then that's what they're supposed to do. But if they had done more, then it would be worth more. So this is what Jesus is getting at, though. We, as slaves of God, bondservants of God, whatever you want to say, we are owed, we're supposed to serve with everything. Meaning this, if you did everything absolutely perfectly, if you want to think of it like school, you got 100% in the class, you aced every single test, you still are worth nothing more to God than what you already owed God. That's what so even if you are perfect, you are still an unworthy servant because you can never give to God something more, something that He needs. Now, He's not telling us this to be able to try to humiliate us, but rather to humble us, to keep us in mind, to help us remember, I am living by the grace of God and by nothing more. So that's the point of that section. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to Luke chapter 18 now. Beginning in verse 1, the Bible reads, "And he told them a parable to the effect that they always ought to pray and not to lose heart." Pause there for a moment. It's not often that the parables tell you what the point of the parable is before you get into it, but here it does. We already know the point is so that we should keep continually praying. Verse 2. I'm near a train track. Verse 2. He said, "In a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, 'Give me justice against my adversary.' For a while he refused, but afterwards he said to himself, 'Though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming.' And the Lord said, 'Hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?'" Okay, so this is the parable. There is a judge, and he's not a just judge. He's an unjust judge, and there's a woman who needs justice. And because he's an unjust judge, he doesn't really care about it the first few times he hears about this. But the woman keeps coming every single day asking for justice, essentially annoying him to the point where he's going to go up and do what he should have done in the first place. Now, this is an interesting one because it's one of these parables where God compares himself to a wicked person. Who is the wicked person in this that God is comparing himself to? God is saying, I am the judge here. I am the wicked person. And the woman is the person who is praying to God. Now, the point is not that God is wicked and will only do justice for us if we annoy him to the point, but his point is this: even a wicked person, if they are petitioned enough, they cannot help but hear the prayers or the petition of the person who's doing it. And God, who does care about us, who is not an unjust judge, how much more effective will it be on this? Sometimes I call this the cat parable, because if you have a cat, you know full well, you might be a righteous owner. You might make sure that you are going to feed your cats every single day, but you better believe, even if you are a just owner, that cat is going to let you know it's time to be fed. I know my wife's cats certainly let me know it's time to be fed, even though I have never once neglected to feed them. Nevertheless, they're going to keep persisting in this the same way. We ought to be the same way in our prayers. Now notice, this is not a call to constant repetition within the prayer itself. That would be a contradiction with what Jesus said during the Sermon on the Mount, that the Gentiles think they are heard for their many words in their prayers. It doesn't have to be a long prayer, but we should be praying often. In other words, don't just pray to God once and think, okay, that's it. I mean, sometimes you can do that, but it's a good thing to keep praying to God. It does make a difference. Our prayers make a difference, and it makes a difference when we pray for the same thing continually. There are certain things that are in my routine of prayers that I have prayed for several times. It's not been a one and done thing, and it does make a difference. That's the point of that parable. Okay. Last one. Man, we're doing great on time. Last one is going to be verses 9 through 14. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. A few things we should point out from this. I think I'm gonna start from the least important and then work my way to the most important. Least important. This parable gives us examples of people standing and praying. I know that seems weird, but there are people out there who will tell you, when you pray, you have to be in this particular position or it doesn't count. No. Here we have an example of standing and praying. Point is this, prayer position is not something that's particularly important. If somebody wants to pray in a particular position, so long as they are not doing it to be seen by others, then fine, whatever. But don't ever let somebody tell you, you must be kneeling or you must be bowing when you pray, because both of the men here, one who is justified, by the way, are standing when they pray. Okay, that's an aside point, not all that important. Here's the very important point. You have 2 men, a Pharisee and a tax collector. One who trusts in his own righteousness. He prays to God. He thanks God that I am not like other men. I give tithes of everything that I have. I fast twice a week. Thank God. Thank you, God, for making me righteous. In a way, this is sort of a primitive version of Calvinism. Those who believe that they are righteous is because God has made them righteous, essentially. There is so much to unpack with this prayer that the Pharisee gives. I'm not like the extortioners. I'm not like these other unrighteous people. I'm not like this tax collector over here. Yet everything about him is designed so that he may be seen. He stands in front of the temple and says loudly so that everybody can hear, thank you for not making me like other men. Let me ask you something. Does anybody actually believe that the Pharisee is being thankful here? Because I certainly don't. I don't think he's being actually grateful for anything. The Pharisee is merely trying to get attention, trying to convince everybody around him how righteous he is. And it is so easy for us to do exactly the same thing. Even for us right now, it's so easy to look, I'm glad I'm not like that guy. And if you did it, you're trusting in your own righteousness. I'm here to tell you something. One of the big things that Jesus came to teach us is that none is righteous. No, not one. If you are humble and honest with yourself, you're going to recognize I've actually been a rather sinful person. But there is a free gift of grace that is given to each and every one of us. If our attitude towards God is, this is very similar from the unworthy servant, right? If my attitude is towards God is, give me my heavenly reward. Give me my reward. This is what I am owed. Then we've made a serious mistake. I've noticed, I noticed something the other day, which I thought was rather interesting. When it comes to the term repay in the Bible, it only shows up a few times, and most of the times it has something to do with God repaying man, whenever God is repaying man, it's never a good thing. Not once. God never once says, I am going to repay you. I'm going to repay you for all your good with heaven, because God does not owe us. The only thing he repays is evil with punishment. That's the repayment. In comparison to that Pharisee, you have the tax collector standing afar off. He stands away because he doesn't want people to see him. He's humbling himself, beating his breast in anguish. Have mercy on me, a sinner. If you want to go down justified before God, don't say you have made me righteous, because that is a lie. John said that if we say we have no sin, we lie and the truth is not in us. Tell the truth. Say to God, have mercy on me, for I am a sinner. Pray for mercy and God will give it to you. But don't lie about it. That's the point of this. If you want to hear more on this one, I highly recommend you looking up this a sermon Josh Hetrick gave. That's Berkeley Springs Church of Christ. You can find it on YouTube. Man, he gave one of the best sermons I've ever heard on this. And he had a hernia, untreated at the time, by the way. I don't know what it is about him that he preaches best when he's in extreme prayer, I guess. Or I'm sorry, extreme pain, I guess. All right. Anyway, there's more I could say on it, but I think that's where I'll stop right there. So, next time we meet, we'll be getting into this part where we can be much more confident of the chronology of things. Because throughout all these teachings and workings of Christ, we've worked through about 3 years of the life of Jesus. And now it's time to look to that oh so important last week or so of his life. I look forward to studying that with you very soon. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I love you all. Goodbye.